All right, now we're here. All right, welcome to episode 15 of the Retro Bar podcast. And today we got Eric Sears, bar manager, Black Forest, and
We're half hour early.
We are half hour early. And Paul even got here a little bit earlier than he normally does for the broadcast.
Amazing.
And
early.
Just for all you people who put money on the bet if Eric would ever show up in my basement and do a podcast. Sucks to be you this morning.
Never thought I'd be here, to be completely honest.
So anyway, Eric Sears, a lot of you know him because he's done podcasts with Beer Busters or whatever.
Beer Busters,
WE
Games,
WEU. So this morning we're here, and I'm sure we'll end up talking beer and Black Forest, but we're also here a little bit to learn a little bit more about him as a person than just a beer guy. Back when Black Forest first opened for lunch on Fridays, 4 years ago, maybe?
About 4 years ago.
Nobody really knew about it right off the bat. I mean, today everybody's full aware of it. But in those early days, I got the pleasure of being there alone some Fridays, and we got to chit chat. So I know a little bit more about him than some people, not as much as others. But anyway, so let's start from the beginning.
Well, yeah, everybody has. You have your work life, and then you have your private life.
Right.
And we've had several guests on that have brought their private life in and wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
Get the word out for whatever their issue was. And so it was nice to get to know them on a different level.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'll start off with how I got at Black Forest. First off, thanks for having me here. Like I said, I never thought I'd be here. But,
it's not as scary as you thought, is it?
Here we are. You would have told me 16 years ago when I got into this business, I'd be in your basement someday. I wouldn't believe it. But I came to Black Forest about 5.5 years ago. Bob and Denise Harder, they own the 1777 Americana Inn. And then they bought that about 8 years ago. Built the brewery from the ground up 7 years ago. And I came on about 5.5. Denise was my home ec teacher at Governor Mifflin High School. I've known Denise forever. Partly because my sister had Denise as a cheerleading coach at Governor Mifflin. And when our mom passed away, I was in 5th grade, and my sister told Denise to look out for me as I came up through the school system. And she did. I never thought I'd be pouring beer for her and all her friends all the time. But, maybe I would have paid more attention in class if I knew that. But it's been a good time. Before I was at Black Forest, I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years. And before that, that's when I got started in the restaurant industry. I played soccer at Albright College for 2 years. I got really injured my freshman year, which led to a lot of medical debt and all that. So I had to drop out, start paying for all those bills. And my buddy Divine actually came into work one night when I was at Malibu's Bar and Grill, which is no longer there. That used to be at the Reading Airport. He came in and he's like, yeah, I just signed up for the Marine Corps. I was like, all right, I'll do that too. And just like that, 3 weeks later, we were in Paris Island. And that was the next 4 years of my life.
So when you, were you born in Berks County?
No, so I'm an Army brat. I was born in North Carolina, Fort Bragg. And then from there, we went to Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas, Fort Polk, Louisiana, Fort Knox, Kentucky. And then my parents separated, and then we moved up to Pennsylvania. And then we moved in with my aunt and uncle, who later took care of me after my mom passed away. But they've been there for me through thick and thin. And we've gone at it a couple of times, my uncle and I especially, but we're better for it now. I mean,
well, yeah. I mean, it
seemed to happen.
Well, yeah. I mean, and I guess in a situation like that, people do what they have to, but it's nobody plans on spending time raising their nephew or their grandkid, or you raise your kids. And then you think, okay, I'm done. So anybody who does that, there's going to be a little clashing.
Did they have kids?
They had one kid, AJ, my cousin, and I don't think they ever planned on having more kids. And then my mom passed away, and then they had 2 more kids. And it's just like, oh my gosh, what do we do now?
Yeah, well, that's
that was
what I mean.
A lot to take on.
It was
older.
My sister's older, yeah. She was believe she was a junior when I was in 5th grade when our mom passed away.
So
Okay.
that puts you at like 10, 11?
Yeah.
11, 12.
I was about 10. I was a
Okay.
year behind
Okay.
age wise because I started school earlier in Kentucky, just because my birthday falls in that weird range.
Yeah.
But yeah, about 10 years old, and then she was about 16, 17. And it was hard for her too, because
Yeah.
I've always done well from moving place to place to place. I can always make friends wherever I go.
Right.
And I tell people, you put me in any situation, doesn't matter who's there, what kind of people, I can flourish in that situation. Whereas my sister, moving around affected her more, where she was on the shyer end of things, and I always had sports to fall back on.
Oh, yeah.
So I was always very outgoing and outspoken, so I did well in that. And that's a product of being a military kid, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I think those are the two ends of the spectrum. Either you're gonna flourish and you'll be better for it, or you'll, not that my sister's not better for it. I don't want her to watch this and be like, but she just didn't take to the situation that well, moving around, especially being a teenage girl and
Yeah.
moving
Well, that
to a
would
new
be-
school.
Yeah, I think in a situation like I think the younger you are, the easier it is to deal with. Like when you're in high school, the last thing you want to do is go to a different high school. And that's when my mom and dad split up. I was in 11th grade, and I pretty much decided whether they liked it or not. Either whoever stays in our house, that's where I'm staying. If they both move out of Calico, I was going to go live with my grandma
Yeah.
because I wasn't picking up and going to some different school at that point in time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of how I was too. My mother, they split when I was in 3rd grade, and
Yeah.
he took off to a different area, and she was intent on keeping me in the effort area. That was all her, and
Yeah.
that was good. Although they got along, after
Right,
divorce, it
right.
still was stressful. And obviously, more stressful than you.
Yeah.
You had it more stressful.
You played soccer at Albright?
Yeah,
Albright,
Division
okay.
3 at Albright.
Albright.
Yeah.
It was, my guess is either that or Alverny. I wasn't sure which
No,
one.
it was Albright. So I started there when I was 17, and I went in. I was recruited as a striker, and we had a kid at Albright who was like the all-time leading goal scorer at Albright. He played on the state championship team for Antietam. They're single A, but he was phenomenal. But he was just too short. That's why he didn't get the looks at D2 or D1.
Okay.
So I came in under him, and I didn't really play that much. My whole life, I grew up as a defender at Governor Mifflin and wherever else, but I really scored a lot of goals my senior year, and that's why I kind of went that route. And we were playing Gwynedd Mercy down at Gwynedd Mercy, and it was garbage time. We're up like 5-1, whatever. And my coach puts me in, and I go up against this kid. He's like 6'4", 6'5". He's just a behemoth. And we both go up for this head ball, and he goes up like this, and his elbow catches me in the temple.
Oh.
And I went lights out.
Okay.
Next thing I know, I wake up and there's the athletic trainer, and she's like trying to help me, and I'm just swearing at her and I'm cursing at her. I reached at my nose and I was like, "What is this? Why am I bleeding?" And she goes, "That's not blood. It was spinal fluid."
Oh,
geez.
Yeah.
no.
So then they had already called the ambulance, but once they saw that, they called the medevac, and I was medevaced off the field to UPenn. And it was my first helicopter ride, and I don't remember any of it. It was the most expensive ride. I had to pay for all of it, and I don't remember it.
Now, why? I do have to ask, why? Like, didn't the college, like when you're playing sport there, wouldn't their insurance cover you?
No,
Like,
private liberal arts.
Oh,
You actually
okay.
like sign a paper at the beginning of the season. It's
Okay.
like you're really on the hook for all this.
Okay.
Special.
Yeah, and I was still on my dad's insurance from when he was in the military, and that insurance when you're in is great, but like if you're dependent on that insurance, it's really not the best.
Okay.
So I really had to foot the majority of that bill.
That sort of sucks.
Yeah.
To be honest.
I mean,
yeah.
regrettably, I had to use a lot of my mom's death benefit to pay that off. Which I mean, you never plan on those things,
Right,
But that's
right.
how it worked out. But I came back. Well, so I woke up that night in UPenn, and I thought I was abducted by aliens. A topic that you're.
Well,
Very close
Time
and
out.
bearded.
Maybe in reality you were.
If they do, they have a lot of creditors, and they send out bills. So.
That's how they cover their tracks.
But I started ripping out all the cords, and I was like, "What the heck is going on?" And I figured out where it was. And then that night it was actually Halloween at Albright, and we went down to a party. I was dead set on going back to this party, and my aunt and uncle were like, "Hell no, don't do that." And I did it anyways, and then we got jumped in Reading.
Oh man.
And I probably shouldn't tell people this, but I was dressed up like a ballerina for my Halloween costume. And the next thing I know, I wake up face down in a bush because we just got jumped in Reading. I was like, I'm done. Albright was a good time, though.
Were there any pictures of that?
I'm sure they're all hopefully they're all deleted. That was right around the beginning of Facebook.
So now going to that, you were recruited by Albright, but
Yeah.
you being a D3, they really didn't have money scholarship wise.
No, there's no scholarships per se.
They
but,
give you academic.
They open up a lot of other
Okay.
options for
Yeah.
you. And that certainly helped out. But at that time, Albright was $39 a year. And it was a lot. And I went in undecided. What like most kids should. I think you should go in with an open mind. But I went in to play soccer. That's really all I was there for.
And honestly, when I got out of high school, I was 17. So I actually worked a year, went to Millersville, and truth be told, the only reason I went there was to play football. And then I sprained my ankle.
Mm.
I wasn't even into the bookwork part of it, and I bailed the last week I could bail out and get half my tuition back.
Yeah.
So I did that. I did go down to Penn State Berks then, and didn't play any. Well, they really didn't have many sports, but they weren't 39 grand a year. I think I paid. It was trimestered, and I think it was like $300 a trimester because you didn't live there. Did you live at Albright, or
I did my freshman year, and then when I came back my sophomore year, I was there sophomore fall season, and I came back, and it was too much money, and I was living at home. But again, with my aunt and uncle and like where we were at in our relationship, I was just staying at the dorms all the time.
Okay.
And I eventually dropped out. I medically withdrew, and they're like, "Well, you have to get a job." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll get a job. I'll get a job. And my uncle would sit me down with like the classifieds, and he's like, "Call this one, this one, this one." And I'd call him. I never called him.
Yeah.
And the one day he's like, "Well, who did you call today?" And I was like, "Well, this one at Malibu's Bar and Grill, I called them, but they didn't want anybody. They had no interviews available." He called them. And this is how I got stuck in this black hole.
It goes back to that old statement: if you never lie, you never have to try and remember what you said.
So he called them, and they're like, "No, we haven't had anybody call better." So he took me there that night, and the next night I started out as a busser, and that was the fall of 2007. And then I did that, and it was a good time. I loved it. I met a lot of fun people there. We really enjoyed ourselves. But that was fall of 2007, and fall of 2008 is when I went in the Marine Corps.
Now, was Malibu's where the silo was, or was that?
No, Silo's up. I think it's like the river edge, right up.
No,
the
yeah,
river.
that was part.
Malibu was in like
actually
in the terminal.
Okay, like Fiorentina's is in Lancaster Airport, more or less.
Yeah,
okay.
I think today now it's Cleaners at the airport.
Okay,
but it was a cool spot. You could go watch, especially when the air show came around.
Yeah.
I didn't really know about the air show. I lived in Berks for all that time, but I never went to the air show. And I showed up for a serving shift one time, and my boss, Barry, you would love Barry. If you get Barry in this basement, I'll come back. He's a great guy.
All right, Barry. Yeah. We're open after next week.
He's like, "Hey, Eric, you have a table of 6 out front." So I get all my stuff, my book together. I go out front to get the table of 6. And I kid you not, I walk out there all dressed as Nazis. I was like, what the hell is going on? Because it was the air show.
They were like,
they were reenacting it. And I was like, "Can you hire these people to like play a prank on me?" And someone told me, like, "No, it's the air show. They're reenactors." I was like, "Oh man, this is an eye-opening experience."
When you were actually going to Albright, did you ever declare a major, or you were just?
I actually declared
what was
political science.
Assuming you would have made it through Albright, what was your aim to be when you graduated?
I wanted to be a lawyer or a politician. I thought I was really going to go that route, and that's why joining the military really appealed to me. Because if I was going to be a politician ever, to have that military background, that's always a good thing to have.
Right.
And I like the whole lineage thing. Like my grandfather was in World War II. My dad was in the army.
That's you said you sort of signed up on the whim. basically.
It was always
But-
in the back of my
But
head.
subconsciously, you, because of your family history and stuff, like I never would have did that. Like that, I am not I have nothing. Anybody that was in the military has more credit for me than, because I just don't think I could deal with that.
It takes a special person. It certainly
Well,
does, and like you see that as soon as you get to boot camp. As soon as you step off the bus, Paris Island, there's the golden footprints. Everybody talks about the golden footprints, but before you step off, that's your last chance of freedom. Once your foot hits that pavement, you are owned by them for the next 4 years. And it
so on the
doesn't
bus
matter-
ride there, if you decided this might have been a mistake,
you could have
you can
stayed on the
bail
bus.
on the bus.
Yeah, just
and you
don't
could
get
have
off the
bailed
bus.
and nothing. You would have been the worse off as far as dishonorably discharged. Okay.
But once you get off that bus, you're done.
Okay.
And you see that. And these kids don't realize is like, you think you can go home at any point that you want. And for as long as I'll live, we had this recruit in our platoon, and we had to do push-ups for whatever dumb reason. We had to do push-ups that day. And this recruit, he's like, I'm not doing them. I don't want to do them. And the first sergeant comes over. First sergeant comes over to you like, that's a bad day. It's a start of that. And first sergeant's like, recruit, you will do these push-ups. Like, and he's yelling and screaming and spitting in his face, all that good stuff. And he goes, I will not do push-ups. And as a recruit, you can't say I. You're never I. As soon as you get off, it's like this recruit or can this recruit. You never refer to yourself as I, because you're now a recruit. That's all
You're
you're
part of the
you are.
team. You're not an individual.
And then he's like laughing. This first sergeant, he's like, "Are you joking? Like, do you know what's going on?" And the next we saw him was 8 hours later, and 4 drill instructors run into our squad bay in the middle of the night, and there's like snot and tears and everything coming out of his face. And they put him in his bed, and then we had to put him on suicide watch. And there were 2 recruits at each corner of his bed, making sure he didn't leave or do anything to harm himself. And he eventually got switched to another platoon. And we were coming back from the Crucible, so this is 3 months later. We see that same recruit marching in Go Fasters, and that Go Fasters are sneakers. That's what you call your sneakers. And he's on phase 1. This is like the first week of boot camp. 3 months later.
3 months later.
I don't know.
So
Where that kid is
he
today.
just wasn't learning
Yeah.
his lesson.
No,
He wasn't going anywhere.
I don't know where this kid is.
He's probably
today.
still there today.
He could be.
They're in charge.
There were kids there that would like tear their ACL and they'd be put in the med platoon, and then they can't go home. You're just at Paris Island and until you rehab, and then you get thrown into another platoon and just get cycled through.
Yeah, that's a heck of a step.
Oh,
I mean,
Yeah.
it's
like
wild.
you really want to be sure that it's what you want to do. I think.
Yeah, you have to be, because if it's
Yeah.
not, you're gonna have a
My
rough
dad was a
career.
Marine, and he absolutely swore that I was not going to join the service. And he just drilled that into my head. Like, you are not going.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and the weird thing, my family, as far back as I know, nobody ever was in the military. And and when I grew up, it was and I think the other thing is I used to get threatened. Not that I didn't misbehave that much, but I always got threatened that if I didn't behave, they're sending me to military school. So I guess I was traumatized that, whatever you do, you don't want to go to military school.
That's interesting. That is still said today. I'm going to send you to Milton Hershey.
Yeah, that was the other. It was
It's
either
like-
military school or Milton Hershey.
And what I learned through school was that Milton Hershey, they didn't take like a lot of major problem kids.
Right.
Maybe they did back then. I don't know, but they.
Well, I
they
think
take kids
originally
that
it used to be for like orphans or
Yeah.
single parent.
You had to be a pretty good kid to get into Milton Hershey.
I guess.
now.
Yeah. So it was
It's a good school.
It
It
wasn't
is a
like a
good
prison
school.
camp.
Yeah. No, that's changed.
So you go in the military on a whim. Well, I mean, subconsciously that's what you wanted to do. But what was your job? What was your position, or whatever you want to call it?
So what I did was supply. I was what is the official term? Supply administrative clerk, which sounds glorious, and it's as glorious as you sit behind a desk. And what I was in charge of doing was anything in the Marine Corps. Everything has a serial number: weapons, your night vision goggles, all that stuff. And anything that had a serial number, I was in charge of keeping account of. So I got attached to 1st Reconnaissance Battalion out of Camp Pendleton, California. And so anything that they had, I had to make sure it's like you have to count these by hand physically every quarter and make sure you have them. And what is a cool job for a junior Marine like myself, because at that point in time, officers would report to me. And I had background in college, and I had done 2 years, and you get these officers right out of college, and they go to OCS, Officer Candidate School, and they get all this power now. And they would come talk to me. I'm like, I know what you're doing. Like, I did what you did for a little bit. I get it. We're the same age.
Yeah.
Just count your gear. And there were some times where they would lose gear, and they get like a file in their and they're like attached to their overall like work file that follows them for the rest of their career. So it was a big deal. But then when I went to Afghanistan, end of 2011. I got attached to our security team for my battalion when we deployed. And what that meant is whenever we had VIPs come into the area, generals, our lieutenant colonel, our sergeant major, whenever they were going out into our area of operations, we would have to push out and provide security to make sure nobody would come into our net. And if they did, and thankfully they never did, we were at the drawdown. That's when we went to Afghanistan, so it was pretty relatively quiet when I was over there. But if they did, we would have to take care of the situation. And I went from sitting behind a desk for like 3.25 years to here's your machine gun, here's your grenade launcher. I was like, guys,
a good time.
Yeah, it's like, guys, do you know what I've been doing for the past couple of years?
Yeah.
And when I was on top of our truck and our convoy, I had a Mark 19, which is an automatic grenade launcher. And that was a lot of fun. I could hit the middle of a target from a mile away.
Wow.
And that I was like the oh crap button. Like if we everything hit the fan, it's like Sears just press down on your butterfly trigger and just blow everything up. And I didn't have to, but I would have if I had to.
Well, yeah,
Nice.
that was your job.
Yeah, you say that, but it's not that.
It's a different mindset.
It is.
Well, you almost had to, you just had to sort of separate yourself from what you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I always like I said, I would have sucked in the military, but if I would have, fortunately, Vietnam, like the draft, like when I got out of high school, I had to register for the draft, but the draft was no longer a thing. I missed that, fortunately, by a couple years. But I always thought if I would get drafted and got sent over there, I would have sucked if I had a gun and I heard a noise, I wouldn't even be looking what I'm shooting at. I would just be like looking to not get shot myself, kind of thing. And I'll fully admit that I would have been scared shitless.
It'd be interesting in the police academy. That's one of the questions: that can you kill somebody?
Yeah.
You know, and there was some that no, you know what? I never really gave that a thought, and I can't. Well, then you need to move on.
Yeah.
We lost guys that like, no, if I'm in danger, somebody else is in danger. Oh, absolutely, we're going to take care of business. But not everybody has that mindset.
Right.
So
no, I would have been the other way. I'll kill anybody that's out there. Just don't shoot me. You know,
so
and that would have been
that
good.
button, and it's gone.
Yeah, you know what's gonna happen.
Yeah,
Did you ever But you did get to shoot that thing in practice.
Oh yeah, lots of times.
Okay.
I went through a lot of grenades.
Now, were you like when you were in Afghanistan? Were you like right in the capital city? Were you in?
No, so we were what's called the Al Anbar province. There's this dam that is a very strategic point. It was when we were there. I'm sure the Taliban have it today. It's whatever. But it was called the Kajaki Dam. And there's one road in and out, and it's Route 611. And we were below the Kajaki Dam. And our mission was to control that area and weed the Taliban out. And the phrase was hearts and minds. Like we literally, and there's a lot of nuances to the military that nobody will ever understand. And the hearts and minds thing I'll never get. We would literally have to like wave and smile at people as we're looking for IEDs in the ground. And it was just to try to win back the people. And to a point I get it, but it just didn't make any sense tactically or for our safety or anything. It just didn't make sense. But yeah, so it was called Patrol Base Alcatraz. And we sat up on top of this hill. So we had 360-degree view all around. And we were trying to control that Route 611 to make sure no Taliban were going in or out, going up the Kajaki Dam. The big part of the Kajaki Dam was if we could rebuild the dam and get them electricity via the dam,
Right.
then they wouldn't have the people wouldn't have to be as dependent on the Taliban. But if the Taliban would control the dam and not give them electricity, then they are dependent on the Taliban, and then that's when they start growing opium. And there were opium fields, poppy fields everywhere.
Right.
And that's, I think at one point in time, Afghanistan supplied 95% of the world's opium.
Wow.
And the Taliban would tell them to grow opium and we'll give you money for it. We were trying to get them to grow corn, wheat,
Right.
all that
Right.
other stuff,
Yeah.
which wasn't as valuable to
Right.
them because the Taliban weren't buying it.
And there is a good reason for legalizing drugs because the Taliban couldn't make
Well,
money.
not all drugs.
Yeah, all
You want to legalize? No, we're not going to do that.
drugs. But it would
Well, you're
eliminate.
gonna
It
get
would,
flagged on
it would eliminate the ability of criminal elements from making any money. What would they sell then if they couldn't sell opium?
There would always be a way to say, you know this. There would always be a way to charge for that.
Yeah.
There's always going to be a way that they're going to put a surplus on it. They're going to control the stockpile. It would. Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah,
all right,
so
we'll-
anyway,
we'll move away
moving
from that.
on.
Yeah, because it's not going
But-
to happen.
but
It's not
when
going to
you-
happen. It's
when
like
you were in
when he has to serve a beer that has more alcohol content than the average beer, you'd have to put it in a special glass.
Now, technically, we don't have to. We do that to control your
Oh, okay.
consumption.
All right.
There are bars you'll go to where it's over 8%. They'll give it to you in a pint.
Okay.
And when I go to those bars, I just know I feel like they're not as knowledgeable
No,
because you're
right.
giving someone an 8-9% beer. You're giving them 16 ounces.
Yeah.
Now, when you give them that smaller glass, it's 3-4 less ounces, but you're controlling that.
Right.
You're not letting them get to that point.
Right. So there's a portion of control that's
Yeah.
making sure that everybody stays safe.
Yep.
That's a whole different
It
No,
mindset
is
than selling
no.
drugs for money to.
That's a whole other podcast.
When you were in Afghanistan, was Bin Laden still there? Like, well, or in the caves or wherever he was?
When was Bin Laden killed? He
I-
was
I'm not
killed
sure.
March. I know it was March. I forget what year it was. It may have been. I was trying to think when I was back in the barracks. I think he was killed before we got there. But yeah, because I think it was before we got there. Because I
Okay.
remember we threw a big party in the
Oh,
barracks. It was like
okay.
Christmas when that came over
Yeah.
there. But the Taliban were just deeply rooted,
Yeah.
and we still had our objectives that we had to find and get rid of, and we were shot at. I remember it was my first or second night on post, and we were at like the entry point of PB Alcatraz, and it was up on top of the hill, so we could see down. And we would like radio in, let people out. And there's this guy, I forget what his name was. Like his code name was like Objective Sandstorm. And this guy was a sniper, and he used a Russian sniper rifle that he left over from when the Soviet
Right.
Union came in, and he would just kill Marines and soldiers all the time. And he was just like, he was a phenomenal shot. And where we were at, so if Alcatraz was here on top of the hill, the green zone is over here, and that's where the river comes down. And the green zone is where all the trees and the brush and everything is. It's green. That's called
Right.
the green zone. And he would hide in the green zone and take shots at us. And we had like ballistic glass and everything, and took a shot and it hit the glass, and thank God the glass was there.
Yeah.
That's-
Wow.
was like, aside from being a war zone, basically, or controlled by the Taliban, is Afghanistan, that aside, is it a neat place? Like, if it was not run by the Taliban, I mean, is it
No, I mean it's
hot?
weird.
Is it
It's
humid? Is it?
It's weird because when we flew from California, we flew from California to Maine, Maine to Germany, Germany to Kyrgyzstan, Kyrgyzstan to Afghanistan, and you landed in Kyrgyzstan. The Air Force Base isn't even there anymore. It was called Manas Air Force Base, and you landed in, and I felt like I was in a James Bond movie.
Oh, right.
Like, because when we flew from Cali to Maine, that was in one of those big C-120s, the big jets that everybody associates with. And then when we flew from Maine to Germany, we were in like a regular airliner. And same thing to Kyrgyzstan. And when go to Afghanistan, you're in that same airplane. But when we landed in Kyrgyzstan, they're in like the middle of a civil war. And here we are just rolling in Marines to go back on our base and hang out. But there's like planes on the tarmac that are on fire and engulfed in flames. And I was like, where the hell am I? Like, what is this? And you get into Kyrgyzstan and there's guys trying to like run into our base and like attack our base. And it's like, we've got 50 cals and they've got an AK. Like that doesn't work out for them. But that's like, it was its own little city. And we did like all our processing there, like our paperwork and everything. And then when you go to Kyrgyzstan, Afghanistan, and land, you do all your paperwork there. And it is hot, it's humid, but it's cold too.
Oh, like in the mountain area.
Yeah. So we were, we could see the Himalayas from where we were,
Oh, really?
just like in the distance.
All right.
And at night, your water would freeze. There were times when I was on top of the truck, we're doing a convoy, and there's snot frozen in my face.
Yeah.
But then you do your combat patrols during the day, and you're walking in and out of the fields, and it's hotter than hell. So it was a weird place to be, but it was cool because you knew the history of it. For me, at least, I like history, and I could think back as like, man, the Soviets tried to take this, the Brits tried to take this, now we're trying to take this.
And it never works
all
out.
this history is there, and that's the cradle of mankind, really, is where that's where mankind kind of started in Afghanistan, the Middle East, all that. And it's like, I am really on the other side of the world trying to help these people as much as I
And
can.
did you find, obviously the Taliban didn't want you there, but the general population, did they seem to be accepting to you guys being there, or did they even want you out of the country?
It's hard to know if they were accepting of us, because I was there in 2011, so the war in Afghanistan probably started. What year was 9/11? 2001. And then we went to Iraq. I think we went to Afghanistan in like 05, 06, or whatever it was. But at that point, they've seen all these rotation. So it's like, we had 9 months there to build a relationship with these people. And when our 9 months is over, that relationship ends. And a new group has to come in to try to start a new relationship.
Right.
And it was kind of ass backwards. It was like 2 steps forward, 1 foot back.
Yeah.
And
Just when they and you were becoming somewhat comfortable, they pulled you out. Now they had it. So every rotation only probably got to a certain point, and then they had to leave.
and their culture will always be their culture.
Right.
And we can't change that. You can't change a religious mindset.
No.
They've been fighting religious wars over there since the beginning of
before
time.
the U.S. ever existed.
Oh yeah.
You know,
And it's got to get to a point where it's like they have to figure it out on their own, just like our country figured it out on their own back in the 1700s.
Right.
It is upsetting to see the pullout and to see all that land grab that we had and all the relationships we had, and the Taliban just took it over in 3 days.
Yeah.
Because we trained those guys. We trained the Afghan National Army, and for their army to fall in 3 days, it was just like, oh my gosh. Like,
Well, I mean, and then looking back, I mean, there was an awful lot of money, lives, time that basically, in the end, didn't accomplish anything.
Yeah, but people say that, and I get how you think that, but we were giving them a shot when nobody else was going to give them a shot.
But at some point, they have to take it upon themselves.
They do, and we thought we were going to get them to that point. We didn't.
It's sort of like, well, like you got a kid or a nephew or whatever, and you know they screw up, and you try and help them out. There comes a point where, okay, I'm done helping you out. You got to make it on your own now. Otherwise, they never amount.
But at least you try.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of my favorite sayings, and it's a Bible verse. I don't know what Bible verse it is. I'm not really into the Bible, but one of my favorite sayings was, "If not me, then who?" It's like, if I don't do it, then who else is going to do it? And that's kind of what I base my whole military experience on. It's like, I know people can't do it. They don't want to do it, but I am physically able, physically willing to do it.
Right.
So
and for that, you should be. I thank you.
So I'm sure that it would be hard to change a society in 6 years.
Yeah.
Right. So, but you give them that chance.
Yeah.
Right. So you break it free, and they're not under the tyranny, and now you have the freedom of doing what you really want to do.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the military steps away, and Taliban steps in. And that's got to be a hard choice for somebody who wanted to do the right thing, but all their friends and neighbors are jumping on the bandwagon. And if you don't, they're coming after you or your family. So I guess that has got to be a tough one to
Yeah.
I would also think that even when they were there providing protection, in the back of probably a lot of the civilians' minds are, okay, if I give them some info or whatever, they're probably going to remember that they were the ones that did that, and when you leave and they get their chance, they
Well,
might.
it's not hard to see the people that we're talking to because we're rolling up in these 7-ton and Nat V's and MRAPs,
Right.
and it's like we're pulling down their driveway. It's like, oh, what are they doing down there? It's very obvious who the
Yeah,
Marine
okay.
Corps is talking to when
Right.
they're there, or the Army or whoever. But it was more of a money grab. It's like, we can give you this bag of cash, and we would carry around $100,000 with us at any given time. And it's like, we'll give you this cash for this information, and that information would really lead to nothing.
Well, that's a friend of mine was I don't know how high in rank he got. He retired from the Army, and he was in Iraq commanding a platoon over there. But he used to say that they would go around, and maybe cash, but other, like, hey, we'll give you an air conditioner if you tell us what that's going on down there and stuff. It was like paid off for information, really, which you do what you got to do. But it's got to be tough for all those people in all those countries that are sort of under the rule of a dictator kind of thing. Because how I guess the strength in numbers, but nobody wants to be in those numbers because they're afraid what's going to happen to them if they sign up to be part of that.
I mean, there is a small group of that population that wants to better it, and I think 10, 20 years we are going to see that generation take over their country and do actual. I mean, they're doing elections now, but actual elections that mean something.
Right.
Get the elders out. I mean, it's all cyclic. I mean, it happens in our country as well.
Right.
Absolutely. Generationally, there's new people coming in, and they change the course of their country.
So, and you don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, but I'd be interested to know your thoughts, being in the military, about Ukraine. And we're spending a lot of money over there.
Yeah.
And we're obviously hurting here. So that seems to be the new thing is, we're paying $5 a gallon for gas, and we're sending millions of dollars over there. And like, why don't you take care of your own house? Now, maybe you have a different attitude about that because you've been in them.
Yeah. I think my viewpoint is, and I get that people are hurting now. I get that everybody's hurting at the gas pumps and at the grocery store and all that. And it's hard to see it at face value. Yes, we're giving them millions upon millions of dollars to keep Russia out of their country. But you have to look past, for me, you have to look past the millions of dollars. Why are we giving them millions of dollars? Because if we don't help, and if the rest of Europe doesn't help, now we're a part of NATO, so we have to help. I mean, that was our decision way back when. So we're contractually bound to do this. We would expect them to help us in the same situation. If we don't give them the millions of dollars to help stop the Russian invasion, then what would happen would Russia would be able to take over Ukraine. So they take over Ukraine, and now they're controlling more waterways. And then you see $5 at the pump. You're going to see $9, $10, $12 at the pump if Russia's controlling the waterways. So if they take Ukraine, where does it stop? Do they move further into Europe?
Yeah, right.
We have a border with them essentially in Alaska.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
there's oil in Alaska too.
Right.
So yes, it sucks. I mean, I don't like. I bought a truck 2 years ago. Like, this is the worst time. But it is hard to see it when you're paying hundreds of dollars at the pump. But we also don't want that on our doorstep.
No,
we don't want. We don't want Russian aggression. We don't want any of that. And Russian aggression for us looks very different than what it would look for Ukraine. Ukraine has tanks going down their streets and everything. Ours would be missiles. Ours would be, we're getting hacked. Our nuclear power plants are getting hacked. Our dams are getting hacked. And that's a whole other headache. I'll pay $10 at the pump to stop all that.
And I think here in the U.S., ever since, the Revolutionary War, we have never lived through any combat on our soil.
No.
So to us, it's like watching a game on TV. So it is different. If it was happening here, or if it happened here 10 years ago and we all remember what it was like, it would mean a
Yeah.
whole lot more for us to realize that we probably should be helping them, because we don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
And but nobody's ever experienced that that's alive today. So it's like, well, it only happens over there.
One thing that people don't really talk about, and it's a very unpopular opinion, and I don't mean to offend anybody by saying this, but we as a nation are a very spoiled nation.
We are.
And it kind
We
of
are.
goes off of what you're saying, is we have been able to live this life that we've been living, our ancestors have been living for so long the way we are, because of our military, because of what we do, because of our stance in the world. And when our stance in the world is, when we are taken down a couple notches
Right.
as a world leader due to certain politicians coming into power, that is not great. And you do not understand the repercussions of, if we're a top 5 power and now we're a top 10 power.
Yeah.
That's leaps and bounds. If our government is not respected, and I'm not saying that our current government is respected, but we're certainly better off than what we have been. When there's a certain level of respect with other nations, then we are afforded the lives that we have. And the biggest memory I have from Afghanistan is I'm sitting on top of the truck and I'm so cold, I'm freezing. And this old man is carrying 2 bags of wheat on his shoulders, barefoot, walking through water. And it's 4:30 in the morning. And it's gotta be like 28 degrees outside. And I was like, man, I used to get pissed when I had to take out the trash. It's like, this guy's doing this so his family can eat. So
Right. No, we are
Yeah.
spoiled. There's no doubt about that. I mean,
it's just, it does suck that we are paying what we're paying right now, but you have to think past that. You have to look past the pump, past the grocery store. It's like, why are prices so high? Prices are so high now so we can live how we want to live later on. And if we weren't giving them millions of dollars, then we could lose Ukraine.
right.
And Russia becomes a bigger power.
Right.
And then maybe we're not a top 3, top 4, top nation in the world anymore, because Russia has a bigger land grab and they're controlling more waterways.
It's just a little frustrating because Ukraine is such a very small portion, and Russia has so many more military people. And they interviewed a Ukrainian officer, and he was like, they just kept coming. We would take them down, and they just kept coming, and they kept coming, and you got to realize, like, because they have a whole huge country full of fighters,
Right.
And I mean, not that they don't do everything they can to win it. But
No, I
wow,
think
it's
Ukraine's
just-
doing a great job.
Well,
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
surprised
yeah.
that the war ain't over.
Yes,
And that,
they've done a great job.
We've been afraid of
Yeah.
Russia forever. And I think now we don't have to be as afraid as what we were. We still have to be afraid of their nukes.
Right.
Yeah.
But we've learned
Right.
a lot about Russian tanks and their
Yeah.
trucks and everything, and they're not kept up on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And they don't put as much money into their military as far as like upkeep and everything that we do.
Right.
And thankfully we do. I mean, we have a shit ton of stuff break down all the time for no good reason. But you're seeing these trucks and these tank columns, like that big convoy that was in Ukraine, all the Russian tanks, and it's like a 15-mile long convoy. It's like, who taught them to do that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You would never
No.
see that in U.S. military tactics.
Yeah.
It would not happen.
No,
That's just one big
that's
target.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. Yeah.
And all you got to do is got to blow up the truck in the back, the
Yeah.
truck in the middle, and the truck in the front. And
Everybody's
then-
stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's
so it is a lesson learned, I think, in history. History will praise Ukraine for what they've done and what they've shown the world. But Russia, Russia has a lot of troops, but a lot of them are conscripted into that, and they don't know that
right.
a lot of them don't know about going into Ukraine. They think they're fighting Nazis,
Oh,
Right.
Okay.
and that's
Yeah.
what they've been told. And
Yeah.
that's
Well,
what they've
and that,
time
yeah,
and
I
time.
mean,
Yeah.
much like North Korea, anybody in that army doesn't know what's going on in the rest of the world. They're in some ways brainwashed.
Yeah. Oh, and that's another thing.
Yeah.
Not to go on another topic, but everybody talks about our fake news and fake media. You want to see fake news and fake media?
Yeah.
Go live in Russia.
Yeah.
That's fake news.
Or anywhere.
They're creating a whole narrative about a war that the rest of the world knows. But in Russia, they think that they're saving the world from Nazis. It's like, no.
Yeah, no,
Their
but that's-
president is Jewish. Like, that's not
Yeah.
how it works.
Yeah, but yeah, that's I think that's true, and I think I'm gonna say I think some news that we're being fed is what they want us to hear.
Yeah.
I think that happens everywhere. who controls the news controls.
Yeah, what you hear, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thankfully, we are in a nation that you can go out and find your own news sources.
Oh, yeah,
Research
yeah.
for yourself.
Yeah.
We can do stuff like this and go on YouTube Live.
Right.
Russia
And
or
and
anyone else
again,
that can
we
shut it
couldn't
down
sit
and be like,
here and talk about this stuff.
no, the Gestapo would be
Yeah,
upset.
No. So the hearings started last night for January 6th,
Yeah.
and not to get the political side of it.
Oh, I'll talk about it. I don't care. I've pissed
that-
off enough people in that.
Just hearing the officer Edwards talk was absolutely horrible.
He
What
was,
they went through. She was injured. She was attacked and injured. And you talk about, the uprising in other countries, and then you look at that and what happened. Like, oh my, are you kidding me?
No,
That was so disappointing.
it's embarrassing.
Yes.
And that goes back to like what I was saying about being a world power. And it's like everybody else's TVs are on too in France and Germany.
Right.
Spain.
And that's what made me think of it when you were saying that other people are watching what we're doing. Then look at that.
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
It's very hard for us to go into another country and be like, well, this is how you should vote.
Yeah.
We don't even know how to vote.
Well,
half the time.
right. And I don't think we should be telling anybody else
No.
how to vote, how to live, and
Mhm.
how would we react if somebody came over here and did that?
Yeah.
We wouldn't like it.
No, nobody likes it. That's why these things
but
happen.
that's why I think in some respects, if we're not in immediate danger, like Vietnam, I'm not a war history buff, but why we're trying to tell all these people to become democracies, and maybe they just don't want to be, and why are we thinking we're in charge of all of that?
I think it goes back to what I said. If not me, then who?
Well, I guess. But
And if it's not us, then what if it's China? And China's like going to help this country out that's in need, and they set up their system. Now China, our biggest threat,
right,
is much larger.
Yeah.
And they have much more power than what they used to.
And a new partner.
And and a new partner. It's like
Yeah.
that's why we have to do the things that we do. And
Mhm.
yeah, we go into these countries that many people don't think we should be in, but it's at the end of the day, it's all big game, and we want to be the winner.
Right.
And and we want to be the winners because we want to be the best country. That's what we based ourselves to be forever.
Right.
And all this independence. And we don't want China to be the winner. We don't want Russia to be
Right.
the
Well,
winner.
no.
Because if they're the winners, we will definitely be the losers. And
Oh yeah.
and when we lose,
well,
it's bad.
because like you said earlier, we're spoiled. If any lifestyle on earth has the most to lose, it's us
Oh yeah.
by far.
No.
I mean, if the third world countries, how much worse can it get for them? Where us,
Yeah.
it can get way worse.
Oh yeah.
And we don't want to lose that.
Yeah. Well,
And if we don't want to lose that, we have to keep doing the
I
things that we're
guess.
doing.
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
It's a tough pill to swallow, and it doesn't look good on CNN or Fox News or wherever you get your news from. But we have to do the things that we're doing so we can continue to do the lives that we've been living.
I'll agree with that. Believe it or not.
I think
Yeah.
we should end on that. If you and I are
I-
agreeing on
Yeah.
something, we should get out of here now.
Woo! Yeah. Well, it is about time to leave anyway.
Yeah.
He has to get to work. He's
Yeah.
manning the whole Black Forest on his own today, and we're going down for lunch at noon. So
Yep.
we got to get out of here, let him go. But thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
for
you
having
very
me
much.
on.
And like we tell every guest, you're not limited to one trip down here. So yeah, we want to come
I'm
back.
sure I'll make a visit back.
All right.
And by the way, like any guest on this show, we did not pay him anything to come on here.
Now they will pay me later.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, we
yeah. But we'll get something for it. All right, we'll see you next week, you guys.
Okay.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.